Hola amigos, episode 14, Sweatshop Book Club. This week we have something a little more divergent than strength conditioning, athletic performance, all the good stuff. The subtle art, which is called the subtle art, all right? Subtitled A Counterintuitive Approach to Living a Good Life by Mark Manson. This is a New York Times bestseller, so if choice language offends you in any way, I'm sorry for that, but this has been on bookshelves in bookstores. Do you know what bookstores are? They're these like brick and mortar things that you would go, and they have these sometimes hardcovered, which are also covered in paper, depending on what kind of book they are, or paperbacks. It's a slang term for them, paperbacks. They're places where you would buy things like this, books, as opposed to PDFs or things of that nature. Cool places, very, very eclectic cool places. When this came out, this was all over the place, right? It is counterintuitive, it uses choice language, we'll put it that way. So already two red flags for me in terms of what's going on. And I know this isn't my genre that I've been nipping at and dissecting, but I needed something different, something to do a deload so I can later super compensate my brain. Okay, so the subtle art, what I'm seeing in this is something that is very front loaded with choice language and then gets watered down and sloggy there afterwards. Contextually, there's some good stuff in this book, of course. If you got your head screwed on right, this book isn't going to do much for you, but if you don't, then this book can kind of give you a kick in the pants to get you kickstarted into a different mindset. This is not a book about apathy. I think that should be duly noted as well. There's a couple good points in here and a lot of anecdotes, but this book uses a lot of generalizations, relies heavily on dichotomies. My favorite one being, you're not able to learn and grow unless you don't know something. That hit me hard, right? Of course it did. That's me being sarcastic. If you haven't seen that before, I'm being very sarcastic. And this is not a scathing review because this does offer value, but at the same time, I don't wish I didn't read it, but here we are, right? Here we are. The one thing I liked about this was Alan Watts had the backwards law. So if I'm quoting here, it's what the philosopher Alan Watts used to refer to as the backwards law. The idea that the more you pursue feeling better all the time, the less satisfied you become, as pursuing something only reinforces the fact that you lack it in the first place. The more desperately you want to be rich, the more poor and unworthy you feel, regardless of how much money you actually make. And it goes on to, again, use dichotomies and generalizations. Talks about gurus, right, and people that are like mindset coaches and things of that nature. The more you want to be spiritually enlightened, the more self-centered and shallow you become in trying to get there, right? And that's pretty clear in general across the board. So as a global concept, I think that that's fair. And there are a lot of points in here that are really good. There is good in this book, I will say that. Even though I didn't like it or appreciate it as some of the people in here writing, great reviews afterwards. I think it reads like a middle school Tucker Max, if you know who that is. Get a chuckle out of that, I guess. It's a name you haven't heard in a while. And I'd like to see what the breakdown is. And again, I'm not hanging on the choice language thing. It sells, it works, it's a New York Times bestseller, so who am I to argue with that, right? I'd like to see where the choice language is, because I felt in the first few pages it was very heavy, and then it kind of like dwindled a little bit, and then it kind of was there also, it's kind of in the background. But when you use choice language on the front, I would expect it to be there, and the shock value is gone after a while. It's watered down, right? So these are things that I thought were interesting about the book, and it's basically a step-by-step guide within, how many pages is this? I can't believe I even finished it. I didn't want to finish it. The acknowledgements are on page 211. So it's 210 pages. It's a lot of chapters, and again, it's chapter 1, don't try. Chapter 2, happiness is a problem. Chapter 3, you are not special. I agree with that. Chapter 4, the value of suffering. Really good stuff. Chapter 5, you are always choosing. Chapter 6, you are wrong about everything, but so am I. Chapter 7, failure is the way forward. Chapter 8, the importance of saying no. Chapter 9, ellipsis, and then you die at the acknowledgement. So a couple cool anecdotes in here. They talked about Best and how he got replaced by Ringo Starr before the Beatles got famous. They talked about Dave Mustaine, how he got kicked out of Metallica, and how he became super successful as well. But the parallel there is that Dave Mustaine sold X amount of records, but he wasn't part of the band that was the greatest rock and roll band of all time, arguably Metallica. So in his eyes, even though he was a great success compared to everything else, compared to Metallica, he felt like a failure, as opposed to the drummer that kicked out of the Beatles. If he didn't get kicked out before they got really famous, he wouldn't have met his wife, wouldn't have kids, he wouldn't have had a different perspective on life. So something that is important in this book is the idea of like, what are you measuring and how are you measuring it? And is that something that you can get away with in terms of keeping yourself happy? And it's not a book that is, I don't want to say combative in terms of counterintuitiveness, but it is a book that relies heavily, again, like I said, on generalizations, storytelling, and then approximations of what that actually is to make sure that it keeps a reader's attention. So it's nice to read something that is not strength and conditioning, speed related, heavy on the science and theory. It is nice to read something that is more anecdotal, something that's a little bit more at the front of what a bookstore would be. You know, we'll see after this if there's bookstores still around. I know my Barnes & Nobles got shut down, so feeling that. That's all I got for you. Would I suggest it? No, I would feel bad if you didn't like it if I suggested it, right? So I can't really, not even with the change of heart, suggest it. So there it is. Number 14, something other than strength and conditioning.